The Retirement Cafe podcast, the 9 accelerators for a successful retirement, funding care. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Retirement Cafe podcast with me, your host, Justin King. If you're thinking about your retirement or already retired, you're in the right place. My aim is to help you plan for and live a successful and meaningful retirement. Retirement is far more than just a financial event. It's a significant life event, a major transition, which will bring with it new challenges and opportunities. So each episode contains tips, information, and inspiration to help you feel more informed and confident about your retirement. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hello and welcome to my podcast. This week we return to our series on the 9 accelerators for a successful retirement. This is the 6th episode and it's all about funding care, which of course is pretty topical considering the government's recent announcement about the new health and social care levy. If you've missed the first 5 episodes, check out the show notes for this episode on our website, theretirementcafe.co.uk, or on your preferred podcast player, where you'll find links directly to each episode. If you have been following this series, you'll know that when I'm not recording podcasts or creating videos about retirement, I run a retirement planning business called MFP Wealth Management based in Christchurch in Dorset. We specialise in helping people retire successfully, and a really key part of that work is making sure our clients know how they will fund any care they may need in later life. Over the years, we've developed a framework for what we feel needs to be addressed for you to be able to retire with confidence, clarity, and choice about how you spend your retirement. We call this framework our Retirement Success Program, and it contains 9 accelerators. These are the areas of planning we consider when helping our clients plan for that next stage of life. So far, I've discussed life priorities, creating a lifetime financial forecast, minimizing lifetime tax, what makes a well-crafted investment, and asset allocation. In this latest episode, Kathy and I will tackle the much talked about topic of care funding. Welcome back to the podcast, Kathy. Welcome to the podcast, Kathy.
Thank you. Good to be back. Good to be back. And this time we're talking about care funding, which is a pretty hot topic at the moment, isn't it? With the government just this week. So we're recording this on the 10th of September, but with the government just this week announcing their long-awaited plan for health and social care reforms. And so obviously, as you know, it's also an area that we've been exploring a lot more recently in your YouTube video series, all about finding and funding care. So anyone listening, if they're interested in that, we'll put lots of links in the show notes and check out the YouTube channel. But we've created lots of short videos explaining everything from the difference between health and social care to how the UK social care system works, to how to claim different types of benefits. So there's a lot to see there. So, but I'm conscious that obviously we won't be able to cover all of that today. So it's a good place to go for more detail. But today I thought it would be interesting for us to perhaps start with a brief overview of how the UK social care system works, to give everyone a bit of a background. So if you feel, or someone you know feel the time has come to need care, what is it that people need to do, Justin?
Right, well, big question, but the step 1 really is establish what care is needed. And the rules for determining eligibility differ slightly by country in the UK. But the first step is still as assessment of care needs. The local authority is obliged to undertake this assessment free of charge, and the outcome will be clarity on the nature of care needed and whether someone will be eligible for support. And this is often referred to as an eligible need.
So could you maybe give us a definition of what an eligible need is?
Yeah, okay. The government definition is the person will have eligible needs if they meet all of the following. They have care and support needs as a result of a physical or mental condition. Because of those needs, they cannot achieve 2 or more of the outcomes specified. And as a result, there is a significant impact on their well-being.
Okay, so there is a really clear definition. So that initial assessment should give clarity to people about, what support they need and in essence, a list of the things that they need help with.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, so if that assessment then concludes that someone has got a healthcare need, what's the next step?
Well, the NHS should work with your local authority to see whether you qualify for NHS continuing healthcare funding, which means all of your care costs are covered, whether you receive that care at home or in a care home. Now, there are a couple of other funding that you may be eligible for, such as a contribution from the NHS towards registered nursing care. So it's worth working with a professional to help you navigate that process.
Okay, great. So I think at this point, it would perhaps be helpful to explain the difference between a healthcare need and a social care need, because I think we know, from experience, that can be quite confusing for people. So what is the difference?
Well, here's another legal definition. A healthcare need is one related entirely to the treatment, control or prevention of a disease, illness, injury or disability, and the aftercare of someone with these conditions. It's the responsibility of the NHS, so it's free at the point of need. Social care, on the other hand, is help that is needed in order to carry out day-to-day activities like eating, washing, dressing, using the toilet and getting around. This is the responsibility of local authorities. Most types of social care are means tested, and even if you apply for social care funding, only 43% of people over 65 are granted funding.
Wow, that's a shocking figure. I actually assumed it would be quite a lot higher. So, okay, great. So that's the definition. So the reality is we're now really talking about social care in this video, aren't we? Because the NHS covers the healthcare costs. So we're now going to talk in a bit more detail about different options for funding social care.
Yeah.
So there are a variety of ways that you can have your care needs met. Can you maybe outline what those main ways are, the options for people?
Yeah. So there's domiciliary care. That's care in your own home. And often people would rather stay at home if they can. They don't want to go into a care home facility, etc. So, and obviously that you're continuing to pay your bills at home, so that can kind of reduce the costs. But the other side of it, you could, by moving into a home, if you're the only one left at home, of course, that you've got that kind of, those resources to draw on. So there's pros and cons. Then, of course, the residential home, including care homes with or without nursing care. Some are also dementia specialist homes, so if you've got that need. You could have a live-in carer. And then, of course, palliative or end-of-life care, maybe moving into a hospice, or that can be provided at home.
Okay, great. So we've got to the point where your care needs have been assessed. What's the next step? What's the next step in terms of kind of getting your care plan put in place?
Well, you should make sure that you're in receipt of all the state benefits you're entitled to, as the local authority will assume that you're already receiving them and when they assess your ability to pay. I have a video on state benefits for those needing care in later life, so we'll put a link to that video below this one in the show notes.
Okay, great. So we know what care is needed. You're claiming all the relevant benefits that are available. What's next?
Well, then it's the financial assessment, which establishes how much you will be asked to pay towards meeting your social care needs.
Okay, I think this is also known as a means test, isn't it?
Yeah, this financial assessment is known as the means test. In essence, the local authority will look at your assets, such as your savings and investments, which include your home, depending on who lives in it, as well as some of your income.
So that's an interesting point about your home, actually, isn't it? Because I believe the rules are different depending on whether the value of your home is taken into account in the financial assessment.
Yeah, so in general, if you receive care at home or if you go into a care home on a short-term or temporary basis, your home will not be included. Also, if you go into a care home permanently, your home will not be included if your partner or sometimes another relative lives there. For example, a relative who is over 60 years old, disabled, or a child under 18.
Okay. But on this point, some people try and give away money or even their home in preparation for moving into care, possibly to avoid paying their fees. Is this legal? Is this something people should consider?
Well, there's been a number of, do a bit of Googling on this one. There's been a number of cases that have gone horribly, horribly wrong, and people have put properties into trust and then ended up with bills or not being owners of their own property again, and the trustee companies have gone bust. It can be a real pickle. This can count as a deliberate deprivation of assets, and the local authority may still assess you as having to pay for your own care. So even if you've given away your home or money, it can be a really risky strategy.
Wow. Okay. So coming back to whether you have to pay for your own social care costs or not, what level of assets can someone have before they have to start to contribute towards those costs?
So in England currently, if you have below £14,250, your costs are fully funded. Between £14,250 and £23,250, you have to make a contribution. And if you've got assets above £23,250 and you have to fully fund your care costs, the threshold is higher for the lucky souls in Scotland and Wales. This, of course, is set to change with Boris's new social care plans, whereby anyone in England with assets worth less than £20,000 will have their care fully covered by the state, and those who have between £20,000 and £100,000 in assets will see their care costs subsidised. There is also due to be a cap on social care costs someone will have to pay over their lifetime, and that cap is £86,000.
Although I think there's a lot of discussion about that figure at the moment, isn't there, in the press? I don't think you can avoid it, really. As I understand, perhaps it excludes what's known as hotel costs.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't think that going into a care home is a hotel, but, the reality is, of course, is that there are costs associated that you would have normally paid at home. So your accommodation-related costs of care, those associated with daily living, such as your food, energy bills, and the physical building, would not count towards the cap. Only the costs associated with the actual care provided. And there has been a suggestion that these costs should be capped at £12,000 a year, but even in that situation, it would take you more than 3.5 years to hit it. And at that rate, not many old people would live long enough to reach the total cap. Half of those in care homes die in little over a year, with 3/4 not making it past 3 years. And remember that dementia is perceived as irrevocable consequence of living to an old age, and is consequently it's not viewed as a health issue, and so its treatment is deemed to be social care and has to be paid for by the user. Data suggests that 1 in 6 people over 80 are living with dementia, so that's a lot of people covering many years of social care costs.
It's actually a huge factor to consider, isn't it, when planning for, how you will fund your care in later life. There's probably a different scenario where if you have dementia versus having some other condition that you need some help with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so you've had your financial assessment and you're assessed as having to pay. So I believe they're called Selffunders in the industry, in the profession. So what now happens? What's the next step?
Well, I would seek professional advice to find out which option is best for your situation, and each person's finances are unique, and there are a wide range of options to fund your care. And that might be from income from savings or investments. It could be equity release, it could be a deferred payment scheme, or you could buy an immediate care needs annuity. But we don't have time to go through all of those options in this podcast, but I do have a video for each option on my YouTube channel. So if you want to head there for more information, you can select which video that you want to find information on. Now, there is no robust data on the numbers of our so-called self-funders, but a study by the Office of Fair Trading estimates that 30% of over 65s are self-funders. 25% are part subsidised by the local authority, and 45% are fully funded. And what's more, about 24% of self-funders run out of money. So planning ahead is crucial.
Wow, that's a lot of people needing to pay their own care costs, isn't it? Be interesting to see what happens with the new rules, whether what happens to those figures. But maybe we could discuss a couple of the ways people can fund their own cares. Perhaps a couple of the ways that you've mentioned that people are maybe less familiar with. So, one of those would be the immediate care needs annuity. So, how does that work?
Well, as you know, MFP, we do quite a few of, arranging quite a few annuities for people who want to kind of protect themselves. So a long-term care insurance product, such as an immediate needs annuity. So this is an insurance-based product that guarantees to pay a specific level of care fees for life in exchange for a lump sum. And these sometimes referred to as care plans.
So when you're saying exchange for a lump sum, so this is like an insurance plan, is it? How does that actually work? So you hand over a lump sum, an element of cash, and then you're covered?
Yeah, so it kind of people may know, or people listening may remember the old days when you, in essence, had you got to retirement and you bought an annuity with your pension funds. An annuity, it's always mentioned in Monopoly. You receive an annuity, and basically it's a lump sum to an insurance company. They give you a guarantee, and they pay out that money for the rest of your life. In essence, the insurance company is betting by working out what your life expectancy is. They want you to die quickly, and you want to live for a long time. Okay, so if you're going to beat the insurance company, but they're basically actuarially working out what your life expectancy is by asking a number of questions and going to your doctor for your medical records, and they're kind of turning around and going, well, look, we think your life expectancy is this, pay us this premium, and we'll now take the risk of you not living a long period of time. The reality is some of you will live a long time, some of you will die early. The insurance company is trying to make a profit, but what it provides for the purchaser of the annuity, or maybe even the family, it'll allow you to have a guarantee that you continue to pay those care fees. I don't know if you remember, we had one client who they bought a care annuity. The family, in essence, they had power of attorney, and they bought a care annuity for this lady because also what she wanted to do, this lady, was she wanted to ring fence the fees, and then the rest of her estate, she sold her house, she gave to her granddaughter. So her granddaughter could go and put a deposit down on a house, but she could afford to give that money away because she'd already secured her care funding. So sometimes it just works for people. The reality is what people need to do is look into it and then work out whether guarantees are worth it, whether there's some guaranteed cashbacks if you die within 6 months. There's so many bells and whistles. You do need advice.
And just for clarity on that the income that would be guaranteed, you can set that up presumably at whatever level you think you need. So to cover whether you just need to top up your care or whether you need to pay for all of your care, and it can cover all of it, including your accommodation needs, accommodation costs. It can cover everything that you need.
It can. And it's tax effective. There's no income tax to pay on it because it's basically paid to, as long as it's paid to a registered care provider, it's paid tax free. So there's a good consequence there. But yes, you can. Some people say, well, we'll cover 75% of the care fees and we'll pay the rest via our investments, and of course we'll take into account your pensions coming in. It's relatively complex, but it's not just as simply as, right, I need to cover all of the fees. You could have 10% covered. You can have 100% covered. You can have inflation linking. You can have all different types of things. So it's well worth looking into.
Get advice. Okay, so that's great. So the second option that I think possibly is less well understood would be the deferred payment scheme. How does that one work?
So this is where the local authority lends the money needed to pay for care in exchange for a legal charge on your property. The local authority will be repaid when the property is sold or when you die. Variations of this option exist in England, Scotland and Wales, but in Northern Ireland there isn't a formal deferred payment system. However, the local health and social care trust may offer something similar on a discretionary basis.
Okay, and can you or someone else continue to live in your home if you take out a deferred payment scheme?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, okay. Great. So, I mean, you mentioned earlier that I think it was 25% of people who kind of go into care, they actually run out of money whilst they're in care. So what happens then?
Well, the care system is a bit bizarre. It's largely propped up by a cross-subsidy between higher fees from self-funders and the lower amounts paid by local authorities. I mean, it is nuts, but
service. That's for the same care.
Yeah. It's just a bit nuts, but it's just the way it seems to work. So who am I to kind of say whether it's right or wrong? It's just the way it is. So I'm just going to report how it's working. So yeah, there's this cross-subsidy thing going on. If the care home that you're in, when you run out of money, has no local authority places available, or is a self-funder only residence, this is likely to mean either family or friends must pay the difference between the local authority rate and the usually higher fees that the care home actually charges. And that would be known as a third-party top-up. In the worst case scenario, if such a top-up is not available, you may have to move to another care home, which may be in a different area or which you may not like, but which accepts the lower local authority rate. This can be very distressing for all involved. You know, this is the interesting thing about when I refer back to our discussion earlier about, you know, let's get our house out of our estate, so let's get rid of all our money so the local authority has to pick up the bill and pay. We don't have to pay for our own care. And it's like, well, okay, but if you want the local authority to pay for it, then you've just got to accept what they're going to give you. That may not be the type of home that you want to end up in. It may not be close by to your relatives. It may be in an area that you wouldn't want to live. You know, so you've got to weigh all that up. That actually, you know, I often think, you know, would you choose to go, you know, if you were choosing to go away for a weekend, would you choose a council accommodation to go and stay in, or would you find something maybe nicer? So it gets more complicated when your money runs out. Your care needs will be assessed again to determine whether the local authority will step in at all. For example, if you're in a care home or you're receiving home care as much from choice out of the necessity and run out of money, it's quite possible you could be assessed as not having severe enough needs for the local authority to pick up any of the costs of your care. In England, the Care Act 2014 introduced national criteria for eligibility, and these are the conditions an individual must meet to qualify for care and support. And I explained that earlier in the podcast. And what this means in practice is if your level of need does not meet the minimum eligibility criteria, you'll have to find a way to continue to fund your own care, or, as is often the case, end up on relying on family or friends to either pay your fees or to act as unpaid carers. In any event, if you no longer have enough money to fund your care, you will need to be reassessed by your local authority. Of course, if your capital drops below a certain level, which is the 14,250 in England, but will rise to £20,000 with the new social care plan, you may start to receive state funding.
Gosh, this all seems to be a bit of a minefield. So on a more proactive level, how can people be better prepared for this possibly happening to them, and then obviously feel confident that they can afford to pay any social care costs that they may need in later life? What should they do?
Well, you know, this is all part of this retirement program that we do for clients. But in essence, you've got to look at all aspects of your later life. You know, once you, it doesn't matter whether you've stopped working or you continue working all the way through your later life. At some point, you may need care, and at some point, you've got to look at, you know, how is this all really going to work? If I often think, even if you're in full health today, just imagine that you got, I don't know, knocked down by a stroke or something, and it suddenly quickly had to happen. Have you kind of prepped the idea of have you got a power of attorney? Have you got who's going to act for you? Who's going to help you? Have you thought about the care vision you'd like? Would that like to be at home? If it was to be at home, how would you pay for it? It's kind of running through a process, just a plan really, that if this did happen to me, I've already thought a bit about it and how I would like it to happen, and then talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to the ones who are going to be responsible for you if you're in that position. Even if you haven't got people who will care for you and it's down to the local authority, at least you could just kind of plan it out a little bit and know what needs to happen or what the process would be. It's a planning exercise that hopefully you may never need, but there's no reason not to do the planning.
And hopefully give you and your family peace of mind that you know what you'll do, and you know you can afford the kind of care that you want. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. That's wonderful. I think we've covered quite a lot of things in this podcast. And as I mentioned, you know, lots of videos, and as you've mentioned, lots of videos with much more detail on the YouTube channel. So probably a good place to head if anyone needs any more information.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for helping me explore this hot topic of funding care in later life today. I hope you found our conversations helpful, everybody. And if you have any questions that have popped up for you as you've listened or watched, or you'd like a second opinion on your retirement plan or how to fund care, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can reach me on email at hello@theretirementcafe.co.uk. You can find me on Twitter at JustinKingCFP. You can check out the show notes for links on what we've discussed today, as well as the previous episodes in the 9 Accelerators series. You'll also find links to my YouTube video series on funding and finding care. If you prefer to watch my podcast conversations, you can find a video version on my YouTube channel, which is Justin King MFP. And as always, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please share it with a friend. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts to help more people like you find us. Until next time, I'm Justin King, helping you feel more informed in your retirement.